You're looking at the weigh-in at UFC 175. The All-American hero has already taken down a spider. Can he slay the dragon? 2 titles on the line here in Las Vegas. Chris Weidman, the UFC middleweight champion, taking on Lyoto Machida, and the women's bantamweight champion, Ronda Rousey, taking on Alexis Davis. Hello and welcome into MMA Live Extra. Kerry Chow alongside ESPN MMA writer Brett Okamoto. Let's start with the main event. And by the way, it's a little loud over here, right? This place is still turned up well after the weigh-in.
It's International Fight Week, man. This is a big weekend for the UFC. They got to kick people out of the arena to get them out of here.
Yeah, we're not going anywhere. All right, so that main event, Weidman taking on Machida. The last 2 times Weidman's prepared for a fight, he's been preparing for arguably the greatest fighter of all time, Anderson Silva. Now that he's taking on Machida, how does that affect his prep?
You know, I don't think a lot changes in terms of preparation for Weidman. He's still in that developmental stages of his career where he's really, every time he comes to the UFC octagon, he's got a new trick up his sleeve. Not to say that every UFC champion doesn't improve between fights, but Weidman especially, his game is constantly changing, and I think that is a big part of what makes him so successful is that he's still learning the game. So I don't think that necessarily much changes depending on the opponent, but he is facing a very specific, very unorthodox fighter in Lyoto Machida. So in terms of, in addition to just getting better as he always does, he has to familiarize himself with that karate background that Lyoto Machida brings.
Yeah, and since Machida has dropped to middleweight at 185, he's seemingly unstoppable. What makes him so good at middleweight?
Well, I think it's a few things. First of all, it's what's always made Lyoto Machida very successful is that karate background, that elusiveness, that counter-striking that he has, the knockout power. But then now at middleweight, he's also a little bit more aggressive. I think he knows that he can get away with a little bit more in this middleweight division as opposed to light heavyweight where he was facing some guys with a lot of knockout power. And then just the speed that he's got at 185. This guy is lightning fast in this division, faster than I think any of us really thought he would be.
So fast. We talked to the challenger and the champion. Here's what they had to say.
Beat him up, walk forward and beat him up. Pressure bust pipes. That's what I'm doing.
I know he's a good on the ground, good wrestling, but I'm very confident. I'm very confident for this fight.
All right, you heard from them. So who wins?
Yeah, this is a tough fight to pick. You know, a lot of times the UFC champion comes in, they look dominant. It's tough to see, you know, how the challenger is going to go across beating them. Lyoto Machida definitely has a shot in this fight, but I'm sticking with the champion, Chris Weidman. I think offensive wrestling plays a big part in it. I think he walks Lyoto Machida down, cuts off the cage, does get him down on his back, and either submits him or wins a decision.
All right, Vegas has him as a slight favorite, Weidman that is. Let's talk about the co-main event. Ronda Rousey, the UFC women's bantamweight champion, taking on Alexis Davis. Ronda, there's no one that's unbeatable in MMA. We know this. At any point, someone could beat anybody else. But that being said, right, is Ronda the closest there is to unbeatable?
I think right now in the UFC, Ronda is the closest. And there's a combination of how good Ronda Rousey is, and also just every female is trying to play catch-up to that judo skills, the Olympic judo background that Ronda Rousey possesses, and you're trying to play catch-up to that. But one thing about Rousey is she is also evolving herself. So while everyone tries to deal with what she does so well, she's learning new things. As we saw in the Sarah McMahon fight where she knocked her out with a knee to the body, that was just something that was completely uncharacteristic before of Rousey. Now she's adding that to her repertoire. So which she was already very difficult to beat, but as she continues to add to her game, yeah, she's close to completely unbeatable.
All this talk about unbeatable, Dana White has certainly seen seemingly unbeatable fighters fall. Here's the UFC president's reaction.
You and I were having this conversation a month ago about Renan Barão, and look what happened that night with Renan Barão. Anything can happen in this sport, and that's what makes it so exciting.
I'm finally falling into my groove, and this is my 6th time making this weight. I feel like, all right, this is the way it's supposed to be done. I'm ready for it now.
I'll win because it's my point in time. Ronda's been a great champion. She's, I pushed the limits for women's MMA, but I think it's time for a new face.
So we've heard from the fighters, we've heard from Dana. How can Alexis Davis pull off this upset?
I think for Alexis Davis to win this fight, she has to be ready for that one sliver of an opportunity that Ronda Rousey might give to her. I hate to say this about a fighter who's obviously very talented in her weight class, Alexis Davis, but if Ronda Rousey loses this fight, I think it's because Rousey sort of gave it away as opposed to Davis really going out there and taking it. Rousey's going to have to make a mistake at some point for Davis to win this fight. She's going to have to become too overly aggressive, too careless with something, and if that happens, Davis is talented enough to take it from her. It just depends on whether Rousey makes that one mistake.
Rousey did say she had the best camp she's ever had prior to a fight, so this all being said, does Rousey actually give it away?
No, I don't think Rousey gives her title away. She's going to hang on to that thing, I think, for a while. Davis, talented fighter, but I see her going down in the first round, via a Rousey armbar, which we have seen plenty of times before.
It all goes down Saturday night in Las Vegas at the Mandalay Bay Events Center. That's going to do it for this edition of MMA Live Extra, but keep it right here on ESPN.com for all your UFC 175 news, analysis, and interviews. For ESPN MMA writer Brett Okamoto, I'm Kerry Chow. I'll see you later.